Hello, Bricksters. Thank you so much for joining us. All of you at home, we're so excited to see you back here. I'm Allison Baker. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect at Databricks. We're coming to you live from San Francisco. I'm in room 208 right now. We're getting really excited to see another great session. We're going to talk about elevating your SQL productivity. But before we do that, I want to take a quick minute just to take a look at what we have on the schedule for tomorrow. So we will have some breakout sessions for our viewers at home tomorrow. We're also, though, going to kick off with our keynote. So we're going to have some really exciting announcements, more awesome announcements tomorrow about the data intelligence platform enhancements. We've already had a few sneak peeks today. And then for those of you who are here on site, please visit the expo. We have all of our sponsor booths. Some amazing partners are here with us. You can participate in one of our lightning talks or go through our brain date discussions, something new that we've added this year. And then we're going to throw it over to our breakouts like we did today. And so with that, I'm really excited to present this next speaker. This is Jason. He is a product manager in our developer experience team. Developer experience is one of our most important pillars at Databricks. If it's not simple, it might not be easy, but we're going to keep it simple for you. And he's going to show us some enhancements that we've made to the SQL editor and in notebooks that are really going to elevate and accelerate your productivity when you're working within SQL within Databricks. So with that, I'm going to toss it over to you, Jason. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you everyone for coming. I know it's end of the day. We're probably all a little bit tired. There's a lot of energy throughout the whole conference, and so I know I'm personally a little bit tired, so hopefully I can make it worth it for you for coming tonight. If it's worth any consolation, my wife and I, we had our first baby 2 months ago, and so I've been on paternity leave for a while. And oh, thank you. That's so nice. But while I was up, maybe I shouldn't say the hour, but a lot of times at 2 in the morning, I had a lot of time to think about this talk. And so, I have a lot of things I'm super excited to talk to you about today. So hopefully I can make it worth your while. Again, as kind of mentioned, I'm going to talk about how we can elevate our productivity on Databricks when writing SQL. And so my high-level goal is I hope there's one thing that you all take away that you didn't know before, one little tip or trick that I can show you. So with that, this is a forward-looking statement. I think you've probably seen on all the sessions. Basically says, if I say something today that doesn't come true, you can't hold me accountable for that. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but I got to show the slide. And then I will just say beforehand, the surveys that they give you to talk about the sessions, they actually do really help us. And so if you have the time, we'd love if you filled out the survey and let me know how I did and what you've liked and what we can do better in the future. So with that, let's just jump to the agenda. There's 3 things that I want to do today, and you can just see ahead. I want to spend 35 minutes doing a live demo. So that will hopefully be exciting for everybody. But before that, I want to do a quick introduction to writing SQL on Databricks. What are our goals? What is my goal as a product manager for SQL authoring with SQL on Databricks? Then I want to talk about the 2 main services that you might use to write SQL, so the notebook and the SQL editor. And then, I want to jump into a live demo. So with that, let's jump in. So writing SQL on Databricks. At a high level, my goal when creating SQL authoring experiences is to create simple and powerful experiences. And really what I mean by that is I want to create simple experiences that are easy for people who aren't as familiar with Databricks and who don't know SQL as much to get on and get onboarded and really get insights out of their data. So we're really trying to make it easier to onboard. With more powerful, I know there's some of you, I've talked to you today already, but you've mentioned how you're in Databricks for 4+ hours every day writing SQL. We want to make you more productive in everything you do. And so we're trying to really raise the bar and make you more productive with some of our features and experiences. We do this with 3 core pillars. So the first is with an approachable yet powerful UX. We've spent a lot of time over the last few years really trying to dial in our UX to make it simple, but also powerful, like I said, I guess. And so we want to really dial it down so that you have the editor code that you're looking at is core to what you have, and the output box is core. And then we're tucking away some of the other more less used features. And so we're also, while trying to tuck away those, we're trying to make them accessible with things like the command palette, which helps you to access those more powerful features. The second pillar is collaborative by nature. So we know you often don't work alone in your data explorations, and often you need to share those insights with other people. And so, with both the new SQL editor and the notebook, they're collaborative by nature, support real-time collaboration, have things like commenting, and are also within the Databricks ecosystem, which are very easy to share. Now, the third pillar is we're infusing all of our experiences with intelligence. And I think some people might say, oh, it's just like AI, but we're doing more than just AI to infuse intelligence into these experiences. One example I'll talk about now that I'll show later in the demo is like personalized autocomplete. So based on your usage of autocomplete, the tables that you use, your favorites, we specially rank the autocomplete algorithm to give you those tables right when you need them. And so it's more than just AI that we're infusing into all the product experiences to really help you get more out of them. I couldn't talk about infusing things with intelligence without doing a slide on the Databricks Assistant. And so just want to call this out briefly as I like to call this your context-aware SQL companion. And it's like other LLMs, it helps you write code. But what makes ours different is that it's context-aware. And so it knows things like the code that you've written before. It knows the code that your coworkers have written. It knows the cells that you're working with. It knows which tables are popular. And it takes all of that to, in the moment when you need to have a suggestion or you're not sure what to write, you can hit a keyboard shortcut, pop it open, and it will give you an answer that will hopefully be correct. And I'll show a lot more of this, and hopefully my answers are correct too. But LLMs, they have a mind of their own sometimes. OK, so those are kind of the goals that I have when creating SQL authoring experiences. Now I want to talk briefly about the SQL editor and the Databricks notebook. So these are kind of the two core services that you might use to author SQL. And one of the questions I get is, why do you have both? Like, why do you have a SQL editor and a Databricks notebook? Aren't they pretty similar? And the answer is really that because you all have asked us for both. And so there are some of you, I'm sure, in this room who have been using SSMS maybe for 5, 10, 15 years, and you're really used to that environment. And so I would guess if that's you, you probably are going to be somebody who likes to use the SQL editor as your primary authoring surface for SQL. And so with that, we've really tried to make a focused, streamlined, and familiar authoring experience. We also have a few nice features like a catalog picker, and so you can say this is the catalog schema I want to use. That way you don't have to type the full 3-level namespace every time that you're working in the SQL editor. The Databricks notebooks, on the other hand, this is kind of like our bread and butter. This was our first authoring product that we had, and it's really great if you want to work iteratively across multiple cells and do more complex analysis. For me, I love to start with a notebook, and just my first cell will be just a basic select statement, and then I'll look and I'm like, oh, I think I need something in this column, and just kind of iteratively work. And I'll show an example of that again in the demo. You can also take advantage of Markdown if you really want to tell a story with your analysis. That's something that the notebook's great for, and then also supports multi-language development. So if you get to the point where you think you might want Python, you can do that with the Databricks notebook. So those are all the slides I have, which slides are boring. So let's jump into the fun thing here with a live demo. OK, so I want to start just at the home page and talk about how we're making it easier for you to organize your work within Databricks. So if I just go over here and I click New, Query, this is a new thing that we got a lot of feedback that people were saying, oh my gosh, like I have new query all over, like an untitled new query all over my workspace. It's really cluttering things, and so we fixed that. I see some heads nodding. So now when you create a new query, by default it goes in the drafts folder. And so this is a folder where you're going to have your unnamed things. And now, once I decide that I want this to persist beyond my current execution, I can give this a name. I can say Deus demo here. And if I just hit enter, it will automatically move the query. I can use the move dialog here if I want to. But we also have access to the workspace file system side panel with the new SQL editor. So you can see it's right here. And then I can actually just drag this over here into my Data and AI Summit 2025 demo repo. And this is actually a Git repo. And so I'll call out the first new feature that we have with the new SQL editor is Git integration. So previously with the old SQL editor, you wouldn't have Git integration. And now you can see I have this little pop-up here with the Git modal. And so I can work directly with CI/CD and Git with the new SQL editor. While we're over here on this side panel, I want to go over here and show you the catalog explorer and some of the new things that we have too. So previously, again, like to preview tables, you might have needed to write a simple SQL query. Well, no longer. You can just go to the Catalog Explorer and hover here and click Preview Data. And it will really quickly bring you a preview of the data. So I can say, OK, this maybe is what I'm looking for. This Craigslist vehicles, this looks similar to the car data set. Let's see if maybe this is the one I want to. And so you can really quickly just preview and kind of scroll through to see which table you want to use. Another thing I'll call out is I mentioned this earlier, but favoriting tables is something that is a little bit maybe underrated because it does help the assistant and helps us in other interactions to give you more relevant suggestions. So if I was to just go over here to this Craigslist data set and I was to go right here and I was to say, it's already one of my favorites, but you could add to favorites, but I'll remove it from my favorites from this case. You can see it right here, I have favorites. I also call it this For You tab is really nice because it's mainly the stuff that you'll work with most of the time. I think we do a pretty good job of finding tables that are going to be useful for you. If I went over to all, there's just so much in here that I could look at, so I'll stick with the For You. Next thing I want to orient you is the Run button. Now, I find actually there's a surprising amount of people who aren't familiar with all the options in the Run button. So if you click this drop-down, you have the ability to run all statements or run a single statement. So for example, if I check Run All Statements and select 1 and select, if I could type, 2, and then I run that, you can see I got both statements here. And we also now have multiple result statements, so you can really quickly flip back and forth between the two of them. Whereas if I was to uncheck that, it's like you'd think I'm just on this statement, I just hit Command-Enter to run, and I just have the single statement to run. Another thing I want to call out is we have the ability to run and download all rows. So previously, if you wanted to download more than the data that was returned, you'd have to re-execute your query if you do that. But now if you're going to want to export to CSV or Excel right from the get-go, you're able to run and download all of your rows at once. So that's another cool feature. I'll turn off this limit here. Next thing I want to just talk about briefly is the catalog picker. So it's main is what I want, and I can select JSON here. That's where we're going to be working. And then let's talk about the editor box. So I'll just type select star from, and just calling out the autocomplete again. I have things like car sales data, country data. These would traditionally be lower on the ranking list, but since these are my favorite tables, they pop up first. So I can do that. I'll show another new feature that we've released recently for both the notebooks and the new SQL editor is the ability to do query snippets. And so I could write my select star that way, but I could also just type SSF, and that pulls up a snippet here. And if I type that, I get that instantly, and I can say car sales data, and then hit tab, and it brings me to the end of the screen, and just delete that. And so query snippets are a really cool way that you can kind of templatize common SQL that you write, so you can just insert it whenever you need it. SSF is one that I use, and then I also use it for in the where clause. A lot of times with dates, I might want to do I do within the last 6 months a lot of the times, and so instead of having to write that out every time, I can just add my query snippet to do that. And I'll show you, you can get to query snippets if you go here to this dot menu and you hit View, and then you go to Query Snippets. It will pull them up, and then you can just create them this way. So pretty simple, and I think a pretty underrated way to improve your productivity in SQL. So there's that. One more thing I will show is the command palette. So I mentioned we are trying to simplify the UI, but also give you your features right at your fingertips. And so if I hit Command-Shift-P, and I'll show you the icon down here as well. If you don't remember the keyboard shortcut, you can always hover it here. But the Command-Shift-P or Control-Shift-P on Windows pulls up the command palette. And this is a place where you can take quick action. So honestly, the thing I most commonly use this for is if I want to delete a query. But you can do things like open developer settings, for example, which just will pull this open. If you want to open query snippets, you can do that. Or maybe if you want to change your theme to dark mode, for example, which I know a lot of people love, and I love, but for demo's sake, I'll switch back to light mode. Let's see. Another thing I'll call out here before we jump to the output box is SQL formatting. So if you hit Command-Shift-F, you're able to format your query just like this. And I actually might have seen, let's see if I lowercase this. OK, yeah, I'm showing we now have the ability to customize your SQL formatting. And so if I go back over to developer settings here, and I scroll down, you can see SQL format. So we got a ton of feedback from customers saying, hey, I love your auto formatter, but it doesn't fit with my company style guides. I want to put commas at the beginning or at the end, or wherever you want to do. And so now you can have your cake and eat it too. You can customize your SQL however you want with this. So just to maybe show as example, I like uppercasing my keywords, but we could change it to lowercase here. And then if I go here and hit Command-Shift-F, you can see that it lowercased my keyword casing. I think those are the features that I wanted to show you within the editor box. Let me grab the Craigslist vehicle data set as well, format that, and then let's run all so I can just show you the multiple statement results one more time. So again, previously, if you were to write this, you would only see the Craigslist vehicle data. You wouldn't get both statements. And so now you can really quickly flip back and forth. So maybe I'm looking for a column to join on. So maybe I can scroll over and I can see, okay, it looks like we have VIN here in this. Let me look over. Let me flip over to this result. Is there a VIN column here? And it looks like, okay, there is VIN. So maybe we can join in the future. So just an example of how you could do that. Let me delete this and just go with this one data set, because that's all we're going to need for the next little bit of the demo. Next thing I want to jump into is the result table. So fun story, this is actually the first product area that I worked on when I worked at Databricks. I joined and they're like, hey, we have a result table. It could be way better. Can you rebuild it? And I was like, yes, that's such a fun project. And so I spent a lot of time improving this over the last 2 years. I've talked about before, we have spreadsheet-like selection mechanics. You can grab things. If you want to use keyboard shortcuts to only select certain things. If you copy, it does all of that. But what I really want to focus on today is the improvements to filtering that we've made. So one of the things that I personally love to do is I'll write kind of more of a general SQL statement, and then I'll use filtering to dive in and answer different questions about the data, all without re-executing my code. So let's first filter the make, and let's look at Audis. I like Audis. I don't have one. I would love to have one day maybe, but I don't have one. So you can see I can add a filter by clicking into the column that way, and then I get is one of, if I can search, or I can select things this way, or I can just search here. So if I type Audi, I could filter that, and now we see only Audis. Another quick way to apply filters is if I right-click, I can say filter by or exclude this value, so maybe A4 is one that I can look at. I also like white Audis, so maybe I'll filter to only find white Audis. And then another cool thing about filtering is the options you have to filter are dependent on the data type. So I have this sale date here, which is a date type, and if I add a filter on this one, let's see, maybe I want to get maybe in 2015 and above for the sale date. I have is one of, but if I go, I can say after here, and I can select a date here. And so I actually have a calendar to go pick. And so I can go back here, switch over to 2015, for example, January 1st. And so instead of having to memorize any syntax, you can just click through like that. And so now we have Audi A4s that are white that were sold after January 1st of 2015. So that's one way that I could add filters, but I think there's probably even an easier way to do this, and this is one of the ways that I think we're infusing intelligence into the product. So if I just hit the AI button here, I can say white Audi A4s sold after Jan 1, 2015. And boom, we have the same filter created. And so as you can see, that wasn't a simple, I didn't just say state of Georgia or something. That was a pretty complex with 4 different filters that I could do, just natural language. And so really quickly, that's a way that you can use filters. Now, the other thing I'll show you is we recently announced or released the ability to do this on your full data set too. So I got a lot of feedback before that was like, Jason, I love filters, but my tables have billions of rows. I can't use those because they're only working on the truncated data. Well, if you see over here, you can see the filters are applied to truncated data. And if I click this, I can change this to full data set. And so what this does now, we'll rerun the query with a cache version, and it will then give me all of the rows on all of my data. So you can see before we had 4 or 5 rows. Now we have 368 rows that apply to this filter set. Another thing we've improved with filters is they also apply to visualization. So if I click this plus button, I can add a visualization, which is a great way to tell a story about my data, or maybe if I'm looking for an outage at a specific time, I can go in here and I'll say, let's maybe look at, the color, and let's say it would be interesting to see what the average price of cars by color are. So then we can go to selling price on the y-axis, change this to be average here. And as you can see, this preview is showing me with all of the colors. But if I hit save here, it will create the visualization, and you're seeing that it's only showing white because I'm filtering the color of white here. So if I remove this and apply the change, it will then show me for Audi A4s that were sold after this date, here's the average selling price. So I guess we got to give some informational stuff here. So it looks like white is the most expensive selling Audi. So if you're going to buy a new Audi, maybe you want to buy it white, so then it will have a higher resale value. And then, if I was to take this off completely, so we have no more filters, and apply that, I can see for all cars, it looks like charcoal is if we're taking out this no value, it looks like charcoal is the most expensive one here. So filters, they're awesome. I think they'll save you a lot of time. I hope they'll save you a lot of time. And here's a lot of cool features with them that a lot of improvements that we've made. Okay, I'm going to remove this dashboard, or this visualization, as we won't need it for the remainder of the demo. And the next thing I want to talk about is how we're infusing AI into your development. So let's talk now about the Databricks assistant. There's a lot of different use cases for the Databricks assistant. I think the one that I find is the most useful is for just how quickly it helps me to do things that I could have done it on my own, but I could not have done it that quickly. And so, let's say we have this car sales data. Maybe I'm interested in what's the average price of a car by make. I could write out the 7 lines of SQL really quickly, or I can just type average price of car by make. And instantly it has the context, it has what we're working on, and it can just give me the SQL query to be able to do that. And then I can run that, and let's see if this is a surprise to people. Looks like Rolls-Royce is the most expensive car, and followed by Ferrari and Lamborghini, which that makes sense. So this is the assistant side panel chat. This is a great place to go. If you just have questions about stuff too, I'll show you in a little bit how you can just ask it questions, and it will give you resources and references for its answers as well. But I want to talk now about how we're infusing the assistant into all of the little interactions that you're working in. So let's take this out. Let's go back to select star from car sales data, and I want to join this. And if I just type join here, you can see I'm instantly given with a suggestion. This is our AI autocomplete, which it tells me how I can join this. And so if I can just run this, it will run successfully. And so we can see that in this car sales data set, there were 494 cars that were also sold on Craigslist. And so with Assistant Autocomplete, it could do that really quickly. And one of the best tools that it has is it can look at the other code that you've written before. So it knows that I've done this join before, and that's why I was able to recommend that so quickly. The next thing I want to talk about is Assistant Quick Fix. And so maybe let's add a where clause, and let's say where make is equal to Audi. And I'm going to do capital here. And model is equal to A4. And I don't know if you all caught it. You probably didn't, but there's actually an error in the SQL statement that I've written right here. And when I was putting this demo together for the first time, I actually did not catch it, but thankfully the assistant did. And so if I hit run all, we see there's an error. And then instantly within seconds, the assistant has actually recommended how I can fix this. So it says, oh, hey, look, in your Craigslist data set, in your car sales data set, there are columns that had for make and model, and so you need to qualify that. And so then without taking my hands off the keyboard, I can hit Command Enter, and I can run that, and it has solved my problem. And so again, we're really trying to take the assistant away from this chat interface, which that in itself is great and is useful, but we're trying to bring it into the experiences that you have so that it's just right there at your fingertips as you're working. The next thing I want to talk about is optimize. And so one of the piece of feedback that we got is hey, can you use the information you have on the data intelligence platform to help me optimize my SQL so that I write better and more effective SQL code? And I'm happy to report that we're trying to do that. We have a SQL engine that will do a lot of that behind the scenes. So if you write your SQL in an inefficient way, it will kind of take care of that. But it can't help you for when you actually write bad SQL and forget things like maybe forgetting to use a partition column, or like in this case, doing a cross join with myself. And so if I just hover here, the first thing you'll see is I get a warning. This shouldn't pop up 4 times, so that's maybe a bug with my demo environment. But it says, hey, you have a partition column for transaction date, which you're not using. You should probably use that. You probably shouldn't just query the whole data set like this. And then also it shows me in the join as well. And so if I run this, let me change this to 15. I've run this, and it can be cached, so make sure it's not cached here. And run this. We can see that this query executes. I'm going to grab a sip of water while it's executing. So it looks like it took about 8 seconds to do that. And if I look down here to the bottom right, you can see I have this optimize button. Before I do that, I want to show you the actual query profile too. So if I click in here for C performance, I can click on this statement and I can get a query profile. One of the cool things that we recently released now is you have this, this visual of the query and you can see the longest running operator. So I can see that grouping and aggregating here was the longest running thing. And then I can kind of click through and look at the rest of the diagram to see what else took a long time. But if that's too much for you, you can go ahead and you can just click the optimize button here. This will open the assistant. It takes the query profile, it provides it as context, and then it says, hey, here's a few things that you should probably do. Like, look, this is reading 1.3 gigabytes of data. It's processing 200 million rows of data, and it's saying maybe what you should do is you should probably apply a filter here. You can probably get rid of this cross join, honestly, and then you can use your partition column, and so then it will give me a suggestion here. It looks like this one just wanted me to reduce. When I did it earlier, it told me to completely remove the cross join. So I'll just do that for this, and then it looks like, yeah. Looks like we should be able to run this here. And we can see that ran much faster once using the partition column and removing the cross join. So Assistant Optimize is another way that we're trying to help you to be more efficient and more productive with your SQL. We've got a lot more that we're trying to do with it. We're just starting to roll it out, but hopefully you're able to get some value out of it. And even if the suggestion is not great, I do think just the natural language suggestion for what's taking time and how you can improve will hopefully help you out. In the next part of this demo, I want to shift over to how you can use AI to help you use AI in your own analysis. And so let me click over here. And in this one, I have some Amazon book review data. And so I have a review summary and review text. And what if I want to do sentiment analysis? And maybe I also want to translate review summary to Norwegian. I speak a little bit of Norwegian, and we have some people from Norway in the room. So we can do that. Well, previously, if I wanted to do that, I would have had to switch to Python, gotten some type of translation model or sentiment model. I would not have been able to do it easily in SQL. Well, now with Databricks AI functions, we're able to do that. And so, I can go over here and I can say, hey, tell me about Databricks SQL AI functions. That's how I always talk to my AI too. I say, hey, that's awesome. But it says, hey, okay, so we have Databricks AI functions are purpose-built SQL functions. Here's a bunch of examples. Here's actually an example of AI analyzed sentiment. It took, we're looking at reviews. It says, hey, you might want to do that. And then it provides me references to documentation if I want to look over at that. And so this is a really great way for you to just learn about the product. And I can say, oh, this is awesome. Please help me use AI Translate and AI Sentiment to translate, let's say, review summary to Norwegian and give me a sentiment score. And then after thinking for a second, it says, hey, yeah, here's how you do that. Provides me the code, and I can just point, click, and I can run it. And let's see if it gives me the correct output. Okay, so I have review summary. I have review summary in Norwegian. We can ask Julia, actually, I know this one, not good, ikke bra, looks pretty good to me. And then we can see the sentiment score, which is negative for that as well. And so you can see really quickly, without writing any Python, just a few lines of SQL, I didn't even write the SQL, I was able to translate and give a sentiment score. The next one I want to show off is AI forecast. This is a newer one that we have, but basically this helps you predict future values based on historical values. And so we can see here, this is the same data set we were working with earlier, but I just basically looked at the cars and I said, by the year of the car, what's the average selling price? And if I sort this, it looks like this goes up to 2015. So say we want to see what's going to be the average price of a used car in 2024. For example, we could try and predict 10 years out. And so I can say, can you tell me about AI forecast? What are its arguments? And so it says, hey, yeah, I can do that. Your wish is my command. And so it will give me the different arguments for AI forecast, as well as the syntax, and also gives me an example here with a generic query. And so I can say, oh, awesome. I always like to tell it it's awesome. And I can say, can you help me with my current analysis? I'm just going to leave the typos, doesn't matter. LLMs are good at reading through that. To predict the average selling price of a car up to Jan 1st, 2025. And I can hit enter there. And it looks like it's right, actually. So it gives me the syntax here. And then I can hit run all. And pulling behind the curtains, I shouldn't do this, but this is a newer one, and it gets it wrong like half the time. So it looks like we lucked out this time. But you can see that it predicted the values, and so it says in 2024, this says the median or the average selling price of a car is going to be $27,414, and then we have an upper bound of $36,000 and a lower bound of $21,000. So just to prove that this is not just like, you don't just do this for fun, let's look up what is the average. I've actually looked this up before. I don't need location now. But it looks like the average selling price in 2024 of a used car is $28,400. And so it was actually pretty accurate based on the small historical data set that I have. So you can imagine with your data, it's super, super simple to make accurate predictions that can really help you and your businesses. The next example I'm going to show is AI query. And so this is kind of a general purpose, Swiss Army knife, if you will, of AI functions. And so you can see here what I do. This again is the Amazon book review data set. And it looks like I forgot to clear my results, so we can see the result already. But you basically just give it the AI endpoint that you want to use, the LM you want to use, and then you just say whatever you want here in freeform. You could say, if the value is 0, write, I love cookies. You can say whatever you want here for the LM to do, and it will look at every single row, and it will do what you ask it to do. And so for this case, I said, hey, based on the text, give me a rating from 1 to 10, telling me how helpful the review is. And if I pull this up here, I have the review, the title, and then, if I switch over to this data set, and I have a helpfulness score of saying, hey, this is this helpful. And so really you can imagine for anything that doesn't fit into one of these standard use cases, you can also use AI query to basically fill in any gaps you have there. So this is, again, a really powerful function that is awesome it's awesome to me that we allow you to do this right in SQL. The next thing I want to talk about is some of the new language features that we've released. So SQL scripting is now here, so you can write for loops, you can do if statements. I know a lot of you I've talked to in this room are excited about this, but I think there's a lot of use cases for this. For me, I think maybe the most useful one that I've seen is just if you have your data set that's updating every single day, maybe you want to do a specific check on the rows that come in, and then based on those rows, you can say, oh, I want to insert this into a table over here saying this is like a bad table, or we need to flag this or something more we can look into. And so now you can do that with SQL. We also support SQL pipe syntax. So I know this is not maybe everyone in this room loves pipe syntax. It's funny, since releasing it, I've got a lot of negative feedback about, oh, like, why would you ever write SQL that way? But the point is not to tell you to use it. The point is just saying that you have the flexibility now. If you want to use pipe syntax, you can use that. And so basically, this allows you to write your SQL in any order. So I can say, from car sales data set, select and join. And it doesn't matter which order I write this. It will run successfully. It looks like, not sure what's going on. The assistant could probably fix it. Should we just try it? Let's just try it. I don't know if it will know pipe syntax already. Okay, it looks like it didn't know the pipe syntax. I promise this works. If this wasn't a live demo, it would work. Okay. Moving on now, let's talk briefly about the notebook for the last 5 minutes. So again, why would you use the notebook versus the SQL editor, or the SQL editor versus the notebook? And I think it really just is depending on your preference for what you like. Each has maybe things that maybe they're a little bit better at, but generally we're working hard to make it so that everything that you can do in the SQL editor, you can do in the notebook. And there are a few things that you can do in the notebook that you can't quite do in the SQL editor. So one thing I want to show you that I don't know if a lot of people know about is within the notebook, you can click this focus mode button here. And this will pull open basically like a SQL editor type UI. And so if you're someone who's like, hey, I really, really like the SQL editor UI, but I also want to kind of work across cells and do the multi-cell authoring, you have the ability to do that now with focus mode. And so you can see this is almost exactly what we had before. If I click over here, I can go between different cells doing that. And so that's just something that I just wanted to call out. Another cool thing that we have the ability to do with the SQL editor right now is if I filter this, maybe I'm looking at this as different data about different countries, their life expectancies and population. I'm going to filter Europe here. And then I have this button to create SQL query from filters. So then I can just click this, and I've been given a new cell, which has the SQL that basically generates this exact table. And so you can imagine, like, for example, with the example I did earlier, like you can do some pretty complex stuff with your filters, and then you can just click one button if you want to generate the SQL for that, if you want to share that to someone else, or if you just want to work iteratively. So like just with this example, I can just say create temporary view, my view as, and then give it this. Oops, I hit the wrong button. And then I can run that, and then you can imagine I go over here down to my Europe statistics spot, and I can say, let's select the average, and let's do life expectancy. And let's do region, and I can do from, and then I can say my view, and I can group by region, for example, do the SQL formatting for that. And, oh, I added an extra comma here. Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you. The assistant should have caught that one for me. So then, yeah, there you go. So you can see in the notebook, you have the ability to kind of work iteratively like that across different cells. Also show one thing. If you do ever want to go to Python, I'm actually going to change. I need to change a few things here. So I changed to a Python notebook, and then I'm using a SQL warehouse, which that's one thing is you can use the same compute across SQL notebooks and the SQL editor. But if I change this to my all-purpose compute here, confirm this, and then let me run all again here. You can see actually that in my output now, I have this underscore SQL df, which is storing basically the SQL output. And so I can just add a code cell really quickly here, and I can say maybe for row in, and I can say underscore SQL df dot collect, and then I can say for column in row, and then I could say print column, for example, and then I could run that. And so you can see really quick was able to switch over to Python. And maybe the one kind of cool thing that I'll show that you can do here is you can actually do step-by-step debugging here. So if I just click to add a breakpoint here and then say debug cell, I get like step-by-step here. And so let me minimize this a little bit here. If I continue execution, for example, you can go through. And so not saying this is something that you would do, but you have a lot of power in the notebook to be able to switch between languages. And if you want to use things like the debugger, you have the option to do that. There's a lot more. I could go on talking about the notebook forever, but I think for the purposes of this demo, we got 1 minute left, and it's the last session of the day. So I think I will go ahead and end here. So let's switch back to slides and say. That is a wrap. I just did 35 minutes of live demo. I appreciate you all sticking with me throughout it. And hopefully there was maybe one or two things that you learned today that you didn't know before. And so I hope everyone is enjoying the conference. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.